We're looking at, strategic planning, but the cutting edge of it.
Right, and this thing called first principles thinking.
That, and also how organizations are actually structuring themselves for innovation, looking ahead to 2025.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how these ideas, strategy, first principles, structure, they sort of weave together.
They really do. They intertwine, and that's where you see the breakthroughs happen.
Precisely. So our mission today is to unpack these ideas. We'll share some real-world examples, hopefully compelling ones.
And highlight what it means for you practically. Maybe you're prepping for a meeting or just trying to get up to speed on your industry.
Or maybe you're just curious. So what does this all really mean for how companies plan, how they innovate? Okay, let's break this down.
Let's do it.
So strategic planning. We often think of those, big corporate documents. Maybe they do them once a year, sometimes less.
Right, the traditional approach.
But in today's world, things move so fast. What's the right rhythm, especially if you're trying to be agile?
That's a great question. It's something a lot of leaders are wrestling with.
Yeah.
Because traditionally, plans were maybe 5 years, 3 years, even 2 felt ambitious sometimes.
And those cycles just feel incredibly slow now, don't they? If you're talking true agility.
Totally. It's like trying to steer a speedboat with the turning circle of an oil tanker.
Aha. Good analogy. So if you're going to be truly agile, how often should a company really revisit its strategic plan? Like a full refresh, looking at the market, new products, adjusting the whole framework?
Well, look, the minimum you'd probably tell executives is maybe annually. You need some baseline.
Okay, annually minimum.
But the spirit of Agile, it demands something faster, much faster.
Yeah.
We're really talking about a cycle that's less than a year.
Less than a year.
Ideally, maybe every 6 months for a truly agile strategic plan. It's got to be about constant evolution, constant adaptation, not just reacting when things go wrong.
6 months. That really changes the game, doesn't it? Less about setting a fixed course and more about continuous navigation.
Exactly. Minimizing sunk costs, reallocating resources quickly, failing fast, even at the strategic level. It builds resilience.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, speaking of fundamental shifts, let's talk about this other concept from the research. First principles thinking.
Ah, yes. This one's powerful.
It reminds me, many years ago, I was working at Ernst & Young, and a client asked me about business principles, IT principles, and honestly, I was completely stumped, just blank, didn't know where to start. It was a bit of a cold moment, let me tell you.
I can imagine. We've all been there. But yeah, principles are basically the rules that guide a business.
Right.
Especially for VPs and above.
Right. But first principles thinking, as I understand it now, it goes deeper. Elon Musk calls it a physics way of looking at the world.
That's a great description. It's about getting down to the most fundamental truths.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Instead of reasoning by analogy, we do this because it's like something else we did, or it's like what competitor X is doing.
Which is how most people think most of the time. It's easier.
It is easier, but first principles thinking forces you to boil things down, to ask, what are we absolutely sure is true here? And then you reason up from those fundamental truths.
It definitely demands more mental energy.
Right.
You have to resist the urge to just copy or iterate slightly.
But the payoff can be huge, right, for innovation.
Immense. It pushes you way beyond the status quo. Like the old thinking might be, okay, battery packs have always had, say, 48 cells. So that's just how it is.
Right. That's the analogy trap.
Exactly. First principles thinking asks, but why? Is there a physical law saying it has to be 48? Why not 96? That critical questioning, stripping away the assumptions, that's the key.
So let's make this concrete. Let's dive into some of those examples where this kind of thinking really changed the game.
Okay, perfect.
Well, Steve Jobs and the iPhone, right. The material mentions a core principle was, this phone is going to stay charged all day.
Yeah, non-negotiable. No running out of power after just 3 hours. That was a fundamental truth about what users needed.
And the engineers just had to figure it out. Meet that principle regardless of how batteries worked before.
Precisely. Or think about NASA and SpaceX. When NASA started privatizing things under Obama, a lot of engineers moved over.
Right, to places like SpaceX.
And Musk comes in with this, well, frankly, radical principle. We're going to land and reuse rockets.
Which was unheard of. Rockets were disposable, expensive things you dropped in the ocean.
Exactly. And apparently a third of those ex-NASA engineers were really skeptical. They'd tried for years, thought it couldn't be done.
But the principle drove them.
It drove the company. And now, Some of those rockets have flown, what, over 20 times?
Yeah.
It completely changed the economics.
Incredible. And Tesla, too, sticking with Musk for a second, the principle was the car is going to go 300 miles on one charge.
Mm-hmm. And the engineers initially said, maybe 48 battery cells, that's what's possible.
But he pushed back based on the principle. No, we need 300 miles. How do we get there? We need 96 cells.
It forces that fundamental rethink. Compare that to, say, Blockbuster versus Netflix.
Ah, classic example. Blockbuster was stuck in that analogy, right? People come to stores for tapes.
They couldn't see past the existing model. Netflix, using first principles, asked, what's the fundamental need? Access to movies. How can we deliver that?
And rethought the whole system. DVDs by mail, then streaming.
Right. And Michael Dell, too. His long tenure at Dell is often put down to this kind of thinking. Always willing to reinvent, not get stuck on old manufacturing ways.
So it's really about challenging assumptions, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It separates leaders who just, manage the status quo from those who embrace maybe the turmoil needed to build something truly great.
Okay, so let's talk about another big turnaround mentioned, Lego. They apparently used first principles, thinking quite dramatically what was going on there.
Oh, Lego was in serious trouble. Like on the brink of bankruptcy kind of trouble.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And a core problem was there were no unifying principles, no common guidelines at all. Every division was doing its own thing.
Like what?
Buying different software, totally different inventory techniques, no shared business processes. They even had this crazy number of different plastic colors for the bricks.
Which sounds minor, but...
But it was massively expensive. It adds complexity, cost, inefficiency everywhere. Just chaos, really.
Okay, so disaster looming. Then a new CEO comes in, a former McKinsey consultant.
That's right. And he introduced a set of transformative principles, kind of the one ring to rule them all idea.
Okay, so what were these magic principles that saved Lego? How did they cut through that chaos?
They put 8 core principles in place.
Let me just hit a few highlights that really show the shift. First, one Lego group.
Meaning?
Global standards, global processes. For everything, inventory, product design, finance, the whole works. Break down those silos.
Okay, unify the operation. Makes sense.
Second, and this is key, Lego enterprise model determines application. They basically said, we're standardizing our core system. They went from like 25 different systems down to one big one, SAP in their case.
Right, consolidating the tech backbone.
But the principle was about the model driving the tech, not the other way around. Unify the operation first.
Got it. What else was crucial?
This one, use original business logic, do not copy. This was a direct hit against legacy thinking.
How so?
It was saying, don't just customize this new SAP system to look exactly like our old broken processes. That's the analogy trap again.
Ah, interesting. So use first principles, rethink the process itself from the ground up. Don't just pave the cow path. Exactly. And closely related was number 6. Use applications' best practice processes. Basically, this new software has built-in ways of doing things, like inventory management. Let's trust those best practices instead of trying to reinvent the wheel based on our flawed past.
That takes discipline, right? To let go of how we've always done it.
Huge discipline. The other principles supported this too. Things like training everyone, Lego resources master the platform, making new software by new applications of strategic decisions, using strategic partners, and managing data properly.
But that use original business logic, do not copy, that feels like the real first principles application there. It forced them to shed those old inefficient habits.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about new software. It was a cultural reset driven by that principle. Adopt best practices, don't replicate bad ones.
It's a really powerful story. Shows how clear principles can literally pull a company back from the edge. So this kind of fundamental rethinking, it's not just for internal efficiency, right? It also helps companies spot totally new areas for growth, which brings us to this idea of adjacency.
Right. Finding growth in areas next to your core business.
Yeah, like the example given, Dick's Sporting Goods and their new Dick's Media initiative.
That's a perfect example. It's looking beyond just selling bats and balls. It's kind of mirroring what Red Bull did, isn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, Red Bull started with an energy drink, but then they expanded massively into extreme sports sponsorships, creating Red Bull Media House, Red Bull TV.
Oh, right. They built a whole culture and media empire around the brand.
Exactly. They became a lifestyle brand, a media company, almost, using adjacency. Dix seems to be trying something similar, but focused on high school sports.
Yeah, it says they're not just selling equipment now, they're equipping whole teams, offering streaming for games where parents can post clips.
Providing score-keeping tools, team management stuff.
They basically saw this wide open hole in that specific market and are building adjacent businesses to fill it.
Which creates really interesting opportunities, right? Especially for people maybe studying MIS or tech to build out these new capabilities.
Definitely. And this idea ties into how modern tech organizations, MIS organizations, are actually being structured now, say, in 2025.
Yeah, the research points to this split we're seeing more often.
Yeah.
Teams for technology infrastructure, teams for applications, and critically, a separate function just for security.
Okay, that separation of security, that feels like a significant shift from just having it under, say, the general IT or tech umbrella. What's driving that?
It's largely a defense mechanism, primarily against ransomware, but also insider threats.
How so?
Well, you hear stories. Network admins being offered huge payouts, like 10% of a multi-million-dollar ransom, often in Bitcoin, just to look the other way or provide access.
Wow. Okay, that's a serious risk.
It is. So companies are applying a principle from accounting, really. Separation of duties. You don't have the person controlling the network also solely responsible for securing it.
Right, checks and balances.
Exactly. Security monitors technology. They manage the firewalls, watch the logs, ensure there isn't that single point of failure or compromise. Even mid-sized companies are doing this now, sometimes using managed service providers specifically for that security oversight.
So it's another principle driving organizational structure in response to a fundamental threat.
Precisely.
Okay, so pulling it all together, this whole strategic process, it's becoming much more fluid, more interconnected.
Yeah, it looks something like this. You have a strategic roadmap, maybe looking out 3 years, but revisited much more often, like we said.
Right, that 6-month Agile cycle, maybe?
That roadmap feeds into some kind of project, program, or maybe product management office, the PMO. They handle the portfolio.
Okay.
From there, you've got requirements gathering. And often now, that's led by what they call design thinking teams.
Trying to really understand the user need first.
Deeply understand it, yeah. And those requirements then feed the Agile teams, the ones actually building the stuff in sprints.
So roadmap, PMO, design thinking, Agile execution.
Exactly. But it's not linear. It's a loop.
Ah, how does the loop close?
The insights you get from the design thinking and the results and learnings from the Agile sprints, that all feeds back to inform the scope for the future, to adjust the roadmap.
Okay, so it's a continuous feedback mechanism.
It's a constant, evolving, strategic continuum that model companies are increasingly adopting. And chances are, you, as a learner or professional, you'll find yourself working somewhere within that dynamic loop.
Constantly learning, constantly adapting.
That's the name of the game.
Wow. Okay, what a deep dive that was. We've really covered some ground. From Agile planning being about constant adaptation, not just speed.
To the really revolutionary power of first principles thinking.
Yeah.
Getting beyond how we've always done it to ask what's fundamentally possible.
Yeah, moving past those limiting analogies. And we saw how it plays out, saving Lego, launching reusable rockets.
And creating new value, like Dick's Sporting Goods, finding growth through adjacency. And it's all underpinned by these evolving structures, like separating security, and this continuous improvement loop.
It really paints a picture of the future, doesn't it? Successful organizations are the ones brave enough to challenge their own assumptions, rethink from the ground up.
And just continuously evolve how they plan, how they structure themselves, how they operate. It's perpetual motion almost.
A fascinating, if challenging, landscape.
Indeed. So maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about in your own work, or maybe just an area you're curious about. What are the deeply held analogies or assumptions that might be holding back innovation?
Good question.
And what first principles, what fundamental truths could you perhaps uncover that might unlock a real breakthrough?